No. I don't want 61 mental defense. That's a bit overkill.
Okay. So yes, everything that I did before the start of this thing was reset. That wasn't much. I just had a few things positioned away from, like, the windows so that folks watching at home didn't have to see everything. Oh well. Issue MapTool for crashing for a thing that I've never seen before. I blame the fact that you guys were making secret dice rolls. They clearly weren't secret enough.
Yeah. So yeah, only the even the GM can't see what the dice roll is.
Yes, that was a bad sign. Okay. Anyway, Carmilla's advocate fills the void after Marta departs. There's a clear discrepancy, he argues. He reminds the senators that the witnesses could not name the servant who offered them the job, and that servant must not exist, or else the law would have found him to provide testimony. That's when you see a smirk widen on Salvatore Crane's face, followed by a commotion from the floor as an old man walks before the Senate. There is a, you hear wide-eyed Bjorni say a mournful, "Oh no."
You know who he is?
Bjorni slowly nods. The old man introduces himself as Nicholas Mason, and to the stunned disbelief of Carmilla and the hushed tension of the crowd, he absolutely buries Carmilla. See, Carmilla has a long-standing and well-known dislike of Salvatore, and it's most certainly mutual. And this plan came about as a scheme to discredit Salvatore by making him appear incompetent. Thus he would lose his job. He notes exact gold piece figures, 15 gold pieces to each witness, and produces a private, unfinished letter he found while cleaning Carmilla's study, which notes her plan in full to Bjorni. The senators take the letter, like a guard steps up, takes the letter, takes it to the senators, they mull over it. And after mumbling to each other, conclude that while none of them are handwriting experts, it could be Carmilla's handwriting. They've seen enough of her handwriting before over the years. She is a fellow senator. Carmilla's advocate looks blindsided, unprepared for this swerve. And while he musters an attempt at challenging the servant, Nicholas easily deflects the queries. Most of the senators, too, appear surprised, and they venture questions themselves. Salvatore remains quiet, though, that smirk still on his face, while Ursilia's features, as always, remain mysterious. Before Nicholas Mason leaves the floor, and we move on to your presentation, is there anything you would like to do or attempt?
Guys, you know the best way we could solve this is we could take all the blame.
That would potentially solve it, but wouldn't that mean that we are in the safer danger zone?
Oh yeah, we'd be totally fucked. But I have nothing else to add. I'm just waiting for I'm waiting for a turn. But
I got absolutely nothing, even for our turn. I mean, this is just terrible. I am starting to believe that Carmilla did this.
What does Bjorni know of this person?
Bjorni would confirm in quiet tones that that old man, Nicholas Mason, is, or supposedly now was, a household staff member of Carmilla, a servant who cleaned up the household for 2 years. No, it wasn't 2 years. Maybe a year? Maybe like 9. He doesn't keep track of her servants. But, he definitely is a household staff member. He definitely has been working in her household. He's seen him himself.
Does Carmilla say anything to these accusations?
Carmilla is stunned. Like, hold on. Completely stunned. Like she looks floored, as if she had not expected this at all. Like, perhaps, like, her face is just, like, completely, like, crowded with, like, a mixture of despair, and anger, and surprise.
Does she offer any explanation whatsoever?
Other than through the Advocate, which would basically explain that this is all a fabrication created by Salvatore Crane.
Well, let's hope for high rolls, I guess.
Not denying this completely on rolls.
Tempus can't for help.
No,
He's like
that's the only
staring
thing
at
that
Nicholas. He's trying to figure out who the hell is this character? How did he just come in to demolish things?
Well, we'll use your prior roll, Gryph. We won't have anyone roll anything else. We'll just use those things. You notice right before Nicholas is about to leave, there is a subtle, quick, second-long look between Nicholas and Salvatore. Their eyes meet. The old man smiles. Salvatore's smirk widens.
This just makes Tempus, you know, he can't help his eyes narrow, staring at Nicholas. He can't help it. He's just trying to figure this out. He knew something was up. This just multiplies it 20 times over.
And then the old man will hobble away back through the crowd to his seat. Father Beridian, for his part, is still casting nervous looks between Salvatore and Leon.
What did you do, Leon?
Only positive things.
Like the priest has like a bomb on his stomach or something.
No!
Let it go, I'll blow up the hole. Oh, sorry.
So, one nearby group.
That wouldn't have done it anyway.
So, one nearby group. The only nearby group I can see you targeting is that guard.
Veteran watchman just explodes in purple.
Okay. Nicholas leaves the floor, returns to his seat, the old man does, and the crowd is still full of that hushed tension. A lot of murmuring taking place. There's some quiet, talks among, like, peasants, which, when there's so many of them, like, can filter through and use so many snatches. Some people are now convinced that Carmilla did do this. Some people are very much unsure. Some people don't understand the situation at all. Actually, many people don't understand this at all. Others are arguing that, this would not have been allowed in front of the Senate to speak unless there was any authenticity to it. What matters more now is that there are a few people who are considering now that Carmilla is responsible. Particularly just by how defeated she looks right now. A defeated indignance.
That looked at us once.
Salvatore will attempt to make a motion of like, well, that's enough. We've fucking heard discussions. Let's begin the things. But that is quickly stomped down and crushed by Ursilia Melkor. How there is still a few more speakers left. Much to... And Salvatore frowns at this. And the five of you are permitted the opportunity to step out of your seats into the center of the town hall.
We'll go first before anyone else really has time to do anything. That ledger under his arm.
So you folks may all get up at once.
Yeah, it's a show of synchronized support, so we all stand up.
Sure.
There will be quite a bit of murmuring from the peasantry about how you clearly look like you're outsiders. Dressed as you are. With some of the weapons that you folks have.
Leon, I've merged with you again. I'm sorry.
So we're supposed to go to like the speaker chair, right?
Yeah, you can easily stand there if you'd like. Carmilla can't move; she's chained to where she is.
I'll give a to Carmilla, then I bow to the senators.
Yeah, Carmilla will look up, and her eyes will like they're thankfully pleading at Dwohurim.
Now the time when we condemn her.
I found proof that she was involved with the man.
She tried to pay us for it.
It is. There's a lot of, again, nervous energy running through the peasantry. There is some murmurs about, these outsiders approaching. Clearly, sorts who do not live here, judging by what you're wearing, what you carry with you, and how you look, all 5 of you. The senators look at you, for the most part, with respect. Beridian still has his nervous looks between Salvatore and now the entirety of the group. Cameron looks indignant, and his eyes narrow as he stares at Dwohurim. Salvatore's smirk has changed into a frown, and Ursilia has that same nonchalance, impossible-to-read face.
I wonder why. How's Isaac looking?
Isaac is looking as if, oh great, here comes the ledger thing again.
Excellent.
We'll step up to the podium. Probably only his head and like long beard are visible from it.
You get your stool.
Hooded head, and also looking and says, "Honored council, honored citizens." He bows to each of them as he does. Let me now speak, perhaps as an outsider, but perhaps also with a fresh perspective, untouched by the politics of this fair and noble city. First, I will look at Carmilla Cabot, a woman who, in all the dealings I've had with her, has shown great care for the city and its citizens. I must question again why she would do such a thing as start a mob that would hurt these very citizens, the very citizens whom she has worked so very hard to protect. It is said that this should be an attack on Salvatore Crane, and, well, that seems to be a very single-minded thing for someone who cares so much about the citizens. Would the Carmilla you all know really go so far as to have innocent people killed just to hurt a political enemy? As the dear advocate said, the guard sent by Carmilla could not be identified for the trial, nor has he been caught and brought here. His face must have been covered up so the witnesses could not see it, or surely they could have pointed him out. The only conclusion must be that the guard was an outsider here. Something that I find hard to believe, as no one, except for us, have been able to pass through the bandits that have surrounded the city, at least to my knowledge. Could someone acquire armor and insignias of Carmilla without being from the city? And so easily after coming through the bandits that they would not be recognized by citizens? I must question this, as it seems suspect. Now, I'm not one to blame anyone. I'm but an outsider, but I cannot help but speak my mind on the curiosities that I have found in my work to clear this city of the bandit threat. At this point, you sort of look down and pull up the ledger and open it upon the podium. As some of the things I found have shed some light on a possible scenario for this, the things this trial concerns itself with. This ledger was recovered from the hideout of the Whispering Ravinger. He sort of locks eyes with Salvatore now and begins to read a few entries. It states in here who has taken bribes from the Whispering Ravinger and who has directly aided in the activity of the bandits in return for not having to pay.
Ooh.
And he'll sort of begin to read up a few names loudly, and how much the bribes are, and then sort of, nonchalantly switching the page and reading on until he gets to Salvador's name. And after reading that, sort of Salvatore, direct accomplice, having not needing to pay, he will look up and look around, sort of with a little bit of feigned shock, says, "Why, Senator, that is most peculiar when we think of your allegations in this trial, is it not?"
The crowd is falls into a bit of a scandalous uproar with the names of each of these merchants who've been, accused of having given aid to the bandits. And it gets even louder whenever Salvatore's Crane's name is read out. Salvatore, for his part, his jaw twitches a bit, and he narrows his eyes at Dwohurim. The crowd continues just long enough for Isilia to shout with an amplified, go sound, "Silence!" Crowd falls dead silent.
Now. As I said, I'm not one to blame people here. It just seems a bit peculiar. Would you not think? Now, it would give a motive, whereas Carmilla's motive seems very peculiar. It is known that Carmilla has been, out of her own goodness and own pocket, hiring people to deal with this bandit threat. Perhaps because such a ledger as this existed, someone would want Carmilla out of business so that she would have to stop this activity. Such would give someone, who would be found in this ledger and be very powerful, a motive to perhaps make an uprising and frame Carmilla for this action.
The crowd gets riled up again with quite a number of shouts, pertaining like Carmilla's innocence. Some of them accusing like Salvatore of lying, that cutthroat, slimy, yellow-bellied worm. And then others saying that, outsider, this ledger could easily be duped or faked, what do they know? And this peasant riling continues until Isilia commands them once again into silence, in which case, they fall dead silent.
At the same time, Mr. Silly does this sort of raise his hands, to dampen the crowd. Of course, not having really any effect on it. These numbers and ledgers were brought to the senators before the trial. And yet, I have heard no speaking of it. So it looks slightly frowning. You see, he speaks mostly to the people now, this trial has become full of politics, instead of focusing on finding the truth of this whole affair. Now, if I may but ask a few questions, then, that might bring some doubt, perhaps, into the dealings of what was going on with this whole affair. The guard, who could not be identified and could not be caught, was it not I who just stated, before looking at the ledger, that it was very weird how he could have gotten into the city, being someone no one recognized, and yet have all the equipment he needed to appear as one of Carmilla's household? Why, it happens to me that if he had been allowed through by the bandits, if he had been aiding someone who had a deal with the bandits, then he would have been able to pass through just fine. Is it not also peculiar that even if he was not coming from the outside, even if he was someone who miraculously could not be recognized by voice, face, or name by anyone who saw him, that he has not been caught? Salvatore has done, trained the guards somewhat, and he, if we are to indeed believe that he has this dislike for Carmilla, would most certainly have put in extra effort to catch this guard, who would have proved everything he has said, if only he could have caught him, which apparently he could not.
Now you hold on a second there, dwarf. Salvatore stands from his chair Carmilla Cabot is on trial for the crimes that she has committed, not Salvatore Crane. The household member there, it was a Nicholas Mason, pointing off in the crowd towards the old man, has testified that he approached these witnesses. And so he was the one who conveyed this information. Perhaps you, in your witch hunt, have seemed to forget this.
Excuse me? Could you... Who said that?
That was Salvatore Crane, standing up from the chair, directing that at Dwohurim.
Yes. And it was this Nicholas Mason who...
Yes, Salvatore is saying that the old man was the one who approached the witnesses.
I don't think that was what he testified.
He did not say that directly, no.
Oh, if the senator will excuse me, I do not believe that the dear Nicholas Mason testified that he approached the witnesses, and surely he, if he had done so, would also be standing here next to Carmilla. He sort of looks over to Nicholas Mason. If the dear witness would come on again then and confess to his crimes in front of all the people and the Senate, let us hear it then, and share in Camilla's then terrible destiny.
The crowd pauses, and the old man sort of like hobbles back through, casting an obvious glance at Salvatore, and then calls out, "Yes, I was the one who, on behalf of Carmilla Cabot, enacted these plans. I was afraid of losing my job, and in exchange for this testimony, I was offered immunity for this crime if I would but point to the greater threat, which is her," pointing at Carmilla.
Sort of shakes his head slightly and looks from Nicholas Mason to Salvatore Crane and says, "And so we see I was correct." Looks to Salvatore. "It is truly sad to see that you have already spoken to the witnesses behind closed doors and offered them deals to say what you want them to say." With the hand. "If this witness has not been protected as the others, then I don't really think his testimony can carry much weight in the court of law." Looks to mostly the senators when he says this.
Salvatore is screwing his face up into a mixture of rage and is about to, like, spew fire all over. Isaac actually has a hand on his beard, scratching it contemplatively. Iridian is still looking nervously between Salvatore and Leon. Miriani is nodding in agreement, and Cameron still has his eyes narrowed at Dwohurim. It's actually Ursilia, of all people, who stands up and leans over to Salvatore and pushes him gently back to his chair. Which he will do.
Can you kick me again also?
Sure.
I've already disconnected.
Yep.
Who says, no. I said this is about Carmilla.
There's actually no need
There's
to...
no need to be defensive. Now, continues. As a final statements, I will just say that it is worth remembering how much Carmilla has personally sacrificed to try to rid the town of the bandit problem. Something that has plagued us all, I'm sure. Something we've all felt in our everyday. So looks out to the crowd. Says, "Do not forget that she has done her utmost for all of you. And if you wish," so looks to the senators, "again, look at the ledger. Consider its authenticity. Consider that Carmilla has little to no motive, while, according to the ledger, Salvatore most certainly does." And he'll sort of give the ledger to Mariani for her to confirm its authenticity, if she so wishes. And then he'll bow again and say, "Thank you all for your time." As he will step back from the podium.
Miriani actually takes the ledger back up, and all the senators just sort of like gather around. They murmur with each other, allowing the next person, whoever would wish to speak, do so. Also, the old man is grabbed and taken away.
Yes.
Tempus wants to go next, or shall I try?
One of you try. I'm getting blown away at the moment. My mind's pulling a blank.
I can try.
Do you have anything else to say? Or?
Well, there's always things we can say. There's things we found out. So I don't know if there's anything you want to hold in reserve, guns, Manaki.
No, Hurim is done. He'll go and sit down.
Okay.
Next to Bjorn.
So hold nothing back.
Shoulder. Well, I mean, yeah, do your thing. I certainly don't know what you're going to do, so I can't stop you if it's something I don't agree with.
What are the senators' reactions?
They're still mumbling over the ledger, but their facial expressions are the same as before Salvatore was forced to sit. Cameron's narrow eyes now focus from Dwohurim to Leon. Miriani is contemplative, and she's the one who's holding the ledger. Salvatore looks enraged, like he is barely keeping his emotions in check, and it's probably because Ursilia's next to him. Beridian is still looking nervously between Salvatore and Leon, and Isaac is still contemplatively scratching his beard.
Now, of course, one thing I would like to mention. Now, I heard murmurs from the crowd. You believing we're outsiders, and yes, that is true. Why would we be invested in this? Why would we get involved? And while there are many reasons you could doubt us, there is something towards the ledger, at least. Some of you murmured it could be a fraud by us. But the names in that ledger, those are people which you know have travelled through this town, which we have not been here long enough to know about. How would we know of their identity? How would we have enough information in comparison to those who are actually here and actually would, well, check for yourself? The details go back further than we could try and work out.
Salvatore actually stands up again and says, "Well, it's obvious now, isn't it, outsider? You are the thugs who are working for Carmilla Cabot." And Ursilia actually stands up again and says, "Their names were cleared." Like in like a lower voice, like not like the ghost sound voice. Salvatore looks and says, "Yes, because you're the one who brought it up! You are!" And then he stops, and his eyes widen, as he realizes what he's just said.
Salvatore Crane, did you just disrespect the first citizen of Foghaven?
That's...
The great and wide Ursilia Melkor.
Hurim gasps loudly.
That's not what I... Ursilia's eyes settle coldly on Salvatore. A slow, polite smile spreads across her face, and Salvatore sits the fuck back down.
Leon quickly does a turn, looking to the crowd. To you all, did you just see what I saw?
Scandalous! As first citizen of... Oh, like I say, Salvatore indeed. Maybe he's not so cowardly after all.
He who was supposed to keep your town safe, disrespecting the one who's kept it safe longer than he's existed. Rude. That rudeness is... That should not be meant in a court.
Cameron calls out, "Rudeness aside, Senator Crane is not the one on trial here. Please keep your statements directed at the Senate rather than the citizens who are spectating this."
Of course, Cameron. My apologies. I was getting too emotional about the situation. Justice itself is, of course, important. It is what we're all here for. Now, there are many things I have, while I've been in this town, there are many things I have learnt about it, which are, of course, quite important. Salvatore, of course, has done a fine job overall. If you have a look, he's trained up the voluntary guardsmen. He's been keeping you safe. Though there is something I question. Salvatore, when it comes to this all, Carmilla, of course, has been funding these bandit hunts with her own money, which I must say is remarkable for anyone to do. The guards themselves, of course, have been trying their earnest, I am sure. Looks to the guards that were staring at us. But how in comparison has the person who brought up these accusations done it? Is something I must ask. Because Salvatore Crane, if anyone would care to look into how the guards have spent their money, I believe you brought enough. I believe you have managed to gather enough money from town funds to be able to have a permanent guard. Yet, as I'm sure one of my experts here looks over to Thomas, these guards, these are not fitted in what you'd expect for the levels of money which the town has gotten sent to them. I would just like to clarify: is there something the people should know about your hunting of the bandits? Is there some project which it has been helping to eliminate them using this?